All right, in these problems, we're asked to tell if the expressions are equivalent or if they are different in value. So if we look at A, we have some number divided by 7, and then we have some number multiplied by 1/7. So one way to justify your answer, in that the answer to this is indeed equivalent, is to know that dividing is the same result as multiplying by the reciprocal. So 1/7, the reciprocal of that is, if we flip the 1 and the 7 around, is 7. So multiplying by 1/7 would be the same thing as dividing by 7. So they are indeed equivalent. Another way to tell that they are equivalent is to plug in random numbers for x, and no matter what, the expression should result in the same value. So if I have x over 7, and I'm going to make up a random value for x, so let's say I have x represent 14. So if I got rid of the x and replace it with a 14, it would evaluate to 2. Now if we take our other expression here, which is 1/7 x, which 1/7 next to an x we know means multiply. So if I take out the x and replace it with 14, okay, we know when we multiply fractions, we can multiply straight across. So 1 times 14 is 14, and 7 times 1 is 7, and 14 divided by 7 is 2. So when we plug in a random number, no matter what random number, and you can try other ones, no matter the random number, the expressions are always going to have the same value. Okay, now if we check out B, we have -2 divided by 3. Well, first of all, a negative divided by a positive is going to be negative. And if we divide 2 divided by 3, so 2 divided by 3, we're going to get this repeating 2 here. And the 6 is going to keep reappearing, so we get 0.6 repeating. Okay, so now we check out the other expression. It's 2 over -3, and remember that means divide. So we have a positive divided by a negative, and that is still the same thing as this. It's still going to be negative, and when we do 2 divided by 3, it's going to be the same thing as this. So they are both the same decimal value, -0.6 repeating. So they are equivalent. All right, let's take a look at C. So our first expression here, if we, to prove that these are equivalent or not equivalent, I'm going to go ahead and pick a random number for x. So I'm going to go ahead and let x represent, I'm going to go with 12. So again, you can pick whatever number you want. I'm going to go with 12. I'm going to take out the x, and I know the 5, 6 was next to the x, so I know that means times. And then I'm going to multiply 5, 6 by 12. So you could either multiply straight across, and you would get 60 divided by, and then you'd have 6 times 1 is 6, and 60 divided by 6 is 10. Or remember, we can cross simplify here. And then we'd have 5 times 2 that way as well, which is 10. Okay, so now I'm going to take out the x over here and replace it with that x value, which was 12. And then we'd have 5 divided by 72, because 6 times 12 is 72. So clearly, if we have 5 divided by 72, that is not 10. If we put it in our calculator and divide it, we would get 0.069, etc., which is definitely not 10. So these two are different. They're not equal. Okay, so we have 2/3. So if we do 2 divided by 3, I'm going to change it to a decimal since this one's in decimal. They have to match up here. So when we divide 2 divided by 3, we're going to get this repeating 2. So 2/3 as a decimal is 0.66666. So in other words, we write that as 0.6 repeating. Whereas this one here is just 0.67 and it ends there. So these are not equal. So the expressions are different. Here we have a 6 in the hundredths place, and here we have a 7. So they are clearly not the same. Okay, so if we take a look at E, one way of knowing that the expressions are going to be different is just by using common sense, that multiplying a number by 23 cannot have the same value as if you divide the number by 23. So they're definitely different. And if that wasn't obvious to you, you can, again, they're variable expressions, plug in a random number for x. So if I plug in and let x be, let's say, 23. If I let x be 23, this is saying 23 times x. So that means 23, and if I plug in another 23 for x, 23 times 23 is 529. If I plug in 23 here, that's 23 divided by 23, that equals 1. So clearly they are not, these two are not equal, so they are different. Okay, so first of all, for F, we have 15 divided by 3, so 15 divided by 3 is 5. Here we have 3 divided by 15, so 3 divided by 15, which is 0.2. So they are not equal. They are different. One's 5 and one's 0.2. So different.